So recently, I think it was kind of beginning to middle of last month. There was a segment that came out, and I'm going to be playing it for you guys later, where they talked about on CNBC, which is it's the sister station of MSNBC, owned by the parent company, and their parent company is Comcast, and they basically cover Wall Street type news and stocks and everything, and they are very heavily corporate and support just corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans and the whole kind of corporatized system. And they did a segment with Jim Cramer where he said that Elizabeth Warren is feared by Wall Street and is feared by the kind of the establishment, and if she's president, she's going to be doing terrible things that the elites are going to hate, and maybe she will. Like I said before, I said in an earlier segment, she's decent on economic issues, especially at least what she talks about. She is. Created the whole, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and stuff like that. And other stuff, she's pushed decent reforms. But, is she going to be better than Bernie Sanders? I don't think so at all. Especially when she can't even call herself a, socialist. But, Democratic socialist at least. But it's weird because CNBC's coverage has been really it's been weird. Like they're talking, so it hasn't necessarily been contradictory. Initially, I kind of thought it was, but it hasn't been necessarily contradictory, especially at least when you look at somebody like Jim Cramer. And Jim Cramer, when he did his commentary, he was very they were talking about it. So I'm going to play it. Let me play the clip for you guys because it's important that you guys listen to this first, and then we can kind of get into why, kind of what has changed since then, and then. Because it seems like people's opinions are kind of changing, and this is not new. This is something I've talked about on other episodes where people are starting to warm up to her, and she's kind of becoming kind of more cozy with, the CEOs of big banks, especially becoming cozy with the head of J.P. Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon. But that's something I'll get into a little bit more. But let me just play this segment here with Jim Cramer. This segment was from September 10th, and this got a lot of attention, and some people think it may have been a head fake, and I think it was, but let me play the clip for you guys first, and then we'll discuss it on the other side.
Wells did not have, there's banks have been talking, and they do not have good net interest margin. I still wonder what it's like to have no CEO. What's that like, just?
You've been saying that for months.
You're talking about Wells Fargo. I mean, they have acting. By the way, most of the U.S. government's got acting.
Yeah, but see, that I don't know what the government is per share.
Right.
But Wells Fargo per share has been an underperformer. I don't know. In the end, I know Elizabeth Warren, don't listen. I favor CEOs.
You think it's positive to have a CEO?
I think, yeah. I mean,
listen, it's...
Maybe not.
It is fascinating that they're having such a hard time finding somebody to take this
Intel had a hard find. Now, hard job finding.
Yeah, Bob Swan actually ended up... Well, right.
Yeah, but
this has been harder.
But how is it possible that this company cannot find a CEO? I mean, are they worried about Elizabeth Warren attacking that? She or he would be.
Of course they are, and of course that person is. Why wouldn't they be?
I don't know.
If she becomes president, what do you think is going to happen to the banks?
Well, it would be a suboptimal situation for the banks.
Right.
You think Elizabeth Warren pushes banks into it? Well, they're already down 20% from the highs, but...
Yeah, I just think that there were these hearings in the 30s where they brought rich people in front of Congress and just kind of trashed them. It was effective.
Well, it's about 20 years later, we had the least discrepancy in incomes in the 50s and 60s, all right?
I don't know what's going to happen. Look, I've got to tell you, when you get off the desk and you talk to executives, they're more fearful of her winning. I mean, I've never heard anybody say, look, she's got to be stopped. She's got to be stopped. I don't know. She's very, she keeps going up in the polls.
She's raised a ton of money.
She's going to win Iowa,
time.
I believe. She's a very compelling figure on the stump.
By the way, I hear it too, and it's another reason why companies are being implored to do things now. If you want to get something done,
You really think
M&A or anything, think about doing it soon, because come early to mid 2020, if Elizabeth Warren's rolling along, everybody's going to be like, that's it.
So you're hearing it too?
Oh, yeah.
I wonder what China says about that exact question.
Oh, yeah.
Boy, she is so anti-pollution in China. Remember, she is a person who talks about the, like Mark Benioff in his book coming out, stakeholder, the Earth. The Earth is a stakeholder. Don't worry about that.
Benioff would probably be a supporter, wouldn't he?
We don't know. We don't know. Benioff is very close to the vest. Yes, very close to the vest.
So that was, I would say that was a little bit of a tepid, I would say that was a kind of a tepid endorsement by Jim Cramer of Elizabeth Warren. I don't think he's like full out, going like, oh yeah, she's awesome. She's all, we'll get there in a second. But in that segment, which was again September 10th, he doesn't seem to be like fully on board with her. He's just kind of talking about how the banks might be scared of her, and this was something that Elizabeth Warren, she quote tweeted this segment that was posted on Twitter, and she was like, oh yeah, I totally approve of this message. Yeah, I totally I'm hated by the big banks. Now, are you telling me that the people that consider Bernie Sanders a socialist, are you telling me that they're more fearful of Elizabeth Warren than they are Bernie? I can't believe that. And if you talk to any of the, because all these idiot CEOs of different companies are going out there like, yeah, that Bernie Sanders guy crazy. He's crazy. Crazy Bernie, just like Trump says. And he's a totally crazy guy. I don't even want to consider him, blah, blah, blah. I don't even want to talk about him. I think it was the head of Home Depot or something was on Fox Business talking about that, saying that. But yeah, so people are definitely, in my opinion, are more fearful of Bernie Sanders than they are of Elizabeth Warren. Now, when I mentioned before I played that segment, I mentioned that it's possible that that segment with Jim Cramer and those two other guys, because it was like kind of they host like a kind of a semi round table. Well, it's three guys, so tri table of hosts talking in the early mornings covering what's going on Wall Street, and they're all talking about how Elizabeth Warren is going to be, the people are fearing that Elizabeth Warren, if she becomes president, is going to affect a lot of the companies out there and the CEOs of the big financial institutions or whatever, just big companies are going to be pissed, blah, blah. So a lot of progressives have come out and said that this is a head fake and that this might be something that was manufactured by the Elizabeth Warren campaign, or in some cases, she spoke to Jim Cramer, or she spoke to some of these people, and she got them to say, yeah. It's everybody's totally scared. Everybody on Wall Street is totally scared of Elizabeth Warren becoming president. That's totally true. And she says, I approve this message, blah blah. I don't want to get conspiratorial. I don't know if that's necessarily a conspiratorial position, but at the same time, it just seems a little bit too convenient, considering this next article and also further Jim Cramer clips. So before I get to Cramer again, I want to I want to read this article for you guys from CNBC. And the title of this article is Silicon Valley Donors Starting to Back Elizabeth Warren Despite Her Pledge to Break Up Big Tech. Now, did she quote this article? Did she quote tweet this article and say, yeah, I totally agree with this? I doubt it. So let's get into the details of it. It's a little bit more nuanced, but still, the title pretty much says what the article is saying. So it says, Senator Elizabeth Warren has vowed to break up big technology companies such as Google, Facebook, and Amazon if she becomes president. Even so, a growing contingent of Democratic donors in Silicon Valley, where many of these behemoth tech companies are located, are looking to support Warren's 2020 campaign. Interesting. A series of interviews with some of California's most successful investors revealed that the Democrat from Massachusetts is connecting with these techies through her myriad policy proposals. What's more, they are beginning to believe she may be the best candidate to defeat President Donald Trump. With her continued surge in the polls, they are starting to acknowledge that their preferred candidate, former Vice President Joe Biden, may not end up being the nominee. The decision by these donors to start falling in line behind Warren comes as other primary participants are trying to gain their support. Biden, Senator Kamala Harris, and South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg have been regular visitors to the Bay Area for high-dollar fundraisers. Meanwhile, Warren has sworn off taking part in big money events in the primary because she's doing it in the general, and has vowed to not be swayed by wealthy business leaders. Her campaign put up a giant billboard in the heart of Silicon Valley calling for the breakup of big tech. And then quoting a California-based money manager, and they spoke on the condition of anonymity, and they say, I think people are begrudgingly coming around to admit that she's the best answer because Bernie Sanders is crazy. The guy they thought they were going to get in Joe Biden is looking like an old man, and I think they are looking around and wondering who else is there. Said, and then they continue on saying, she seems pretty sharp. She knows the drill in Washington. She seems on it and has a plan. So let's just pause there. When this person says she knows the drill in Washington, that means that she knows how the donors and lobbyists and stuff. She knows how that works. She knows how that stuff operates. In other words, she's going to be there in Washington as president. Obviously, if she is president, she's going to be doing the bidding of the donors and the lobbyists in Washington. She knows the drill, so she knows what's going on. Now, you can say that to somebody about Bernie Sanders. Bernie knows the drill in Washington. In other words, he knows that it's a corrupt system, and he's going to do something to put an end to it. So you can honestly, to be fair, you can use that term to say anything. But this person is saying it in the context of, hey, Bernie Sanders is crazy. Joe Biden is an old man, and he's sounding crazy, obviously, which is ironic when you call Bernie Sanders crazy, but they mean crazy on policy, and which is not, but they just say that. But they're saying it from the perspective of Elizabeth Warren is good enough that she's going to be doing what we want her to do, and she's going to be bowing at our feet and going to be doing what we ask of her. So. And then she knows the drill in Washington. That's what it is. There's no other way to decipher that when you look at it from the perspective of these people liking Elizabeth Warren. It'd be different if they didn't like her. So they don't like Bernie Sanders. He's crazy because God forbid Bernie Sanders goes and changes the system in Washington and doesn't end up taking lobbyist and donor money. Whereas Warren is doing that. And she's definitely taking part in fundraisers, and she said she's going to take donor and PAC money in the general election too, as I mentioned before. So the next part says, Warren's plan to break up the leading technology corporations argues that they have too much power and an unfair advantage over their smaller competitors. Today's big tech companies have too much power over our economy, our society, and our democracy, she said in a Medium post in March. They've bulldozed competition, used our private information for profit, and tilted the playing field against everyone else. That's why my administration will make big structural changes to the tech sector to promote more competition, including breaking up Amazon, Facebook, and Google, she added. And the next part says, the growing contingent of tech insiders looking to Warren started to take shape in the second quarter when she raised at least $19 million. At that time, she saw two contributions from Chamath Palihapitiya, I'm going to butcher this, Palihapitiya, a Silicon Valley-based venture capitalist, a $2,800 donation from an investor and former Shark Tank star Chris Sacca, and a $2,500 contribution from John McFarland, the founder of audio company Sonos Inc., Warren has yet to announce how much she raised in the third quarter. By the way, the number came out in the third quarter. She ended up raising $24.6 million. So just so to update this article. And it says Paliha Patia, also a partial owner of the Golden State Warriors, which happens to be my favorite basketball team ever since I was basically a kid. That's very unfortunate that a Golden State Warriors partial owner is giving money to Elizabeth Warren, but okay. Not that I would want them to give to Bernie, but it's unfortunate that they have to be involved in all of this scam. So this guy said in an email that the growing support for Warren comes down to her being the equivalent to Trump on the progressive side of the political spectrum, but more policy focused. He contributed $5,000 to Warren's campaign in the second quarter. Damn. The truth is that most of the U.S. hasn't participated in the financial gains of Wall Street or Silicon Valley, in that there is a lot of frustration about systems led by groups of insiders. Paliha Patia said, Trump was the populist right's reaction to this. Warren is the left's. The difference between the two is that Warren is more disciplined, policy-focused, and detail-oriented than Trump. She is Trump's greatest threat to re-election. That is not true at all. Okay, first of all, again, you got to read between the lines. You got to check out the code word here. It's at near the end of the quote from this guy. He says the difference between the two is that Warren is, quote, more disciplined, policy-focused, and detail-oriented than Trump. So when this person says more disciplined, they're basically saying that, obviously, Elizabeth Warren doesn't put out mean tweets. She doesn't say controversial things. She doesn't rock the boat. She doesn't, cause any problems for the big bank, the CEOs of big banks, the financial sector. She doesn't cause problems for anybody. She's just kind of whatever. She's she keeps everything pretty low key. Doesn't cause any problems for us. That's the kind of people these CEOs of big banks want. They don't want somebody like Trump, because Trump goes out there and says things that pisses these people off. And even though a lot of them are making them his bitch. Making him their bitch. They still don't like his cadence, the way he talks, the way he interacts with people, the way he's so outspoken. And who's also very outspoken? Bernie Sanders. They don't want Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders is not disciplined. Bernie Sanders is definitely policy-focused and definitely detail-oriented. I don't know if they think that, but he is. But Bernie Sanders is not disciplined in the way they want politicians to be disciplined. They want politicians to be disciplined to not rock the boat and not cause any problems for the financial sector, for the big banks. So that's what they mean when they say that kind of stuff. And to say that she is Trump's greatest threat to re-election that's totally untrue. Bernie Sanders is undoubtedly Donald Trump's biggest threat. Not only because of the fact that Bernie has zero baggage, but he's actually also an actual democratic socialist or leftist, progressive, actual socialist essentially. And Donald Trump constantly whines about socialism all the time. And Bernie Sanders is the real deal. Whereas Elizabeth Warren is going to be called a socialist, and then she's going to have to respond by saying, no, I'm not a socialist. And then everybody's going to be like, okay, so what are your policies? Oh yeah, I'm just in favor of, putting regulations on big banks, big structural change. Like, she's going to put all these platitudes and cliches, just like Hillary Clinton, and she's going to end up losing to Trump. I guarantee you that's what's going to happen, on top of the fact that she's not in favor of the actual progressive policies that people claim she's in favor of, and she claims she's in favor of. She's not. So she's got tons of issues in that regard. Next part says, an aide to a startup investor who has donated to Warren's campaign, along with many others running for president, said Silicon Valley contributors may organize small dollar fundraisers for her in the Bay Area, and insisted that their support comes from the idea that Silicon Valley is not all in favor of big tech's dominance. Most of Silicon Valley doesn't work for big tech, and a lot of big tech employees have values contrary to their employees, this aide said, later pointing to the walkout that took place at Google offices around the world in November. Silicon Valley venerates competence, vision, disruption, and they see those qualities in Warren. So I just want to say real quick, the whole idea of these startup companies wanting to be able to compete more with the big tech companies, and the fact that she claims she wants to, break up these big tech companies. That, I mean, I get it. I mean, that's an understandable reason to support her. But at the end of the day, the details of what she wants to do are so vague. And when she goes out there and calls herself a capitalist to the bone, she's not really doing herself any favors among the left. Because what the left wants is, now the left, majority of the people on the left are not post-capitalist. Majority of the left, I would say, are probably social democratic or democratic socialists. They don't agree with getting rid of capitalism. They're not post-capitalism. Bernie Sanders is not post-capitalist. But what he does believe is that capitalism should not be running all parts of the country, economy. So obviously when it comes to healthcare, capitalism shouldn't be involved. When it comes to education, capitalism shouldn't be involved. So like everything, all schools being privatized, getting rid of public schools, he doesn't believe in that. He doesn't believe in, he doesn't believe obviously in the banks having as much power. He doesn't even believe in the existence of billionaires. He wants to get rid of billionaires, as I read in an article earlier. Now, does Elizabeth Warren believe in billionaires? I would think she does. And when she talks about, reforming Wall Street and putting a I guess somewhat of a stranglehold on how Wall Street operates and how they do their shit, she's not talking about getting rid of billionaires. And at the end of the day, that is something that needs to happen. You do need to get rid of billionaires. There's one thing to have millionaires, but to have billionaires is ridiculous. Because when you talk about having billionaires, you're talking about people that are just way too rich. Nobody needs $1 billion. You don't need $1 billion. That's just ridiculous. And it's ridiculous to think that the person who believes in capitalism but just wants to do reforms on capitalism, that they are going to be able to solve the problems unless they agree with doing actual real structural change. So what Elizabeth Warren does, she talks about big structural change, but she never really gets into the specific details of how. Now she talks about, I'm going to break up these tech companies, for example. That's a specific example. But ultimately, what is that going to do? It's going to make the other smaller tech companies more competitive. Now, to a capitalist, that's wonderful. To a person that likes, competition, that likes markets, that's wonderful for them. But when it comes to people that are worried about the existence of tech companies and getting bigger, so let's just say you create competition for those bigger tech companies, Google, Facebook, all those, Google, Facebook, Amazon, stuff like that. When you're creating competition for them, it's in a matter of, if it's in a matter of oh, I'm going to try and help all those small startup companies get bigger, that's not necessarily a good thing. And it's actually not a good thing. Because what it does is that you are trying to make those big tech companies less big. You want to make them smaller, and then you want to make those smaller companies bigger. So what you're doing is you're sort of perpetuating the capitalist system that doesn't really fix the problems that we're ultimately having. And you're just going to help smaller companies get bigger, and then what's going to happen to them? Are you going to be able to regulate them? Are you going to let them get bigger? Because ultimately, when it comes down to it, rich companies, rich people, they want to get richer. They want to get richer than they already are. They don't want to give away more of their money. They want to get richer. And if you put regulations on them, it's going to cause problems for their bottom line. It's going to affect their bottom line. They don't like that. They want to have as many opportunities as possible to make more money. And if you take that opportunity away from them, that's not going to be good, and they're not going to like that. And these smaller tech companies don't need to become bigger. What needs to happen is that you need to motivate the smaller tech companies. So just like small businesses, right? Just like a small business exists, you need to try and maintain the existence of these smaller tech companies and not allow those big tech companies to get bigger. So the idea of breaking up the big tech companies is fine, but that doesn't mean you need to go out there and create competition for small tech companies to become bigger. So my general point is getting the smaller tech companies to get bigger is not going to solve our problems. What we need to do is we need to put heavy regulations on the big companies that exist, and then make sure that the other companies that are trying to get bigger also don't try and get bigger. You have to try and maintain some sort of middle balance where companies are not able to get bigger and become, huge conglomerates and big corporations, multinational corporations, because the more of that we have, the more problems we're going to have with income inequality in this country, and we're going to have to deal with possibilities of deregulation, essentially. So obviously, like Bernie Sanders getting into office or whoever, putting regulations on banks, those aren't going to stay. You need to maintain those regulations, and once we have a Republican president at some point, they're going to get rid of all those regulations. So that's putting minor regulations on banks. Big banks, and then Wall Street, and then breaking up the big tech companies is not going to solve all our problems. There's much more that needs to go into it than just that, I believe. And then let me read the last part here, or the last part of this. This part that I'm reading is just kind of one tiny paragraph here. It says, employees from Alphabet Inc., Google's holding company, have combined to give Warren just over $126,000 since she officially entered the race in February. According to the nonpartisan Center for Responsive Politics, Google employees have given approximately $32,000, according to Federal Election Commission records. Business leaders are clamoring for clarity on policy, even more than the policies themselves, as the 2020 election gets closer, said Aquila. I don't know who that's referring to. Yeah, he just seems to be giving some sort of quotes here. But it says, what business is looking for is a period of stability and calm. Aquila said it's less a partisan issue and more about bringing economic conditions that allow businesses to focus on business instead of wondering about the political world every 2 minutes. Many CFOs have told me over the years, I can deal with higher tax rates or lower tax rates. I just need to know what the tax rate will be. An advisor to one of California's bundlers who's supporting a rival campaign admitted their network has taken notice of rank and file employees at these larger tech companies donating to Warren. This consultant said they believe these donations are flowing due to Warren's ability to connect with employees who believe the tech giants have become too powerful and that she's the best bet to beat Trump. They see it up close and personal, and are even victims of some of its problems. Plus, they're just plain progressive and can't stand Trump, the advisor explained. So, yeah, when it comes to these people, I mean, they think they're progressive. They're not really progressive, but yeah, a lot of them do hate Trump. That's not surprising, actually. That's like a totally unexpected thing. When they talk about, I just want stability and calm, and I don't really care about my lower and higher tax rates. I just want to know what it is. I just want to know what it is and stuff. Somebody was saying that earlier. One of these people that I quoted. I mean, these people are mostly, they're just concerned about what their bottom line is going to be. If their bottom line is going to be, the same as it is, they're happy. If it's going to be a little bit less, that's good. But if it's going to be a lot less, they're not going to be happy about that, obviously. But that's all they care about. They just care about the bottom line. They just care about making money. When you're a small tech company or a small business, and you want to make more, you want to live a better life. You want to make more money. That's the kind of business you get into. You get into the tech companies, get into the big banks, all that kind of stuff. And it's one of those things where you have to try and put a stranglehold on them as much as possible instead of becoming friends and buddy with them. And when you're Elizabeth Warren and you're getting support from these people, you're hoping that there's going to be as little regulation on what you do as possible, as much as possible. Now, these people can talk about how I'm okay with less taxes, and then I understand or want the smaller banks or startups and stuff to compete with the bigger tech companies like Google, Facebook, and Amazon. Honestly, I think that's just stuff they say. I just think they just say that just so they can like warm up to Elizabeth Warren and make it seem as if that's what Elizabeth Warren is going to do. Now, whether Elizabeth Warren is going to break up those Google, Facebook, and Amazon and whatever else, I don't know if she's truly going to do that and commit to it. But if she is going to do that, that's a good thing. But that's not enough. And the fact that, like I said, the fact that these people are supporting her is a red flag to me. That's a problem. And I'm worried that she's going to end up flip-flopping, because once she becomes president, if she becomes president, I'm afraid that she's going to flip-flop and she's going to end up doing the complete opposite of what she's promised, because she's being liked by these people in tech, in the tech companies, the Silicon Valley, and then she's cozying up with the heads of big banks and stuff. So she's making the rounds and trying to get these people on board with her, and she's trying to make sure that they like her more and that she can get their approval. So that brings us back to Jim Cramer again. And now, like I said, in that first segment I played for you guys, he didn't speak overly glowing of her, but just 2 days later, in a segment that they did on CNBC, he was fawning all over, and then he'll do another one I'll show you in a second too. But let's play this one real quick, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Warren is front and center in all the issues that we talk about.
She retweeted us for a second straight day. I think the lead Drudge all morning long, all overnight, was Wall Street, she must be stopped. I said the words you delivered on this show at the beginning of the week.
That's what they say to me over and over again. I mean, they don't even want her to. There are people who say, how can you put her on? How can you put her? As if she's like, some sort of pariah. She's a senator of the United States of America.
She's a very serious, rigorous person.
You bet she is.
And
smart as a whip.
And somewhat relentless.
One day I'll tell you about how I met her.
Strong characteristic for people who achieve things.
And you will say, she is rigorous. She tweets and then sends you to position papers.
Yes.
She does not tweet. She's not calling anyone a bonehead.
Although, despite the fact that you brought this line to the conversation that we're looking at right here, you have a soft spot for her, it seems.
Yes.
Because?
Because I think that she has thought about the people who are doing not well in the country, and that is great.
Can you say yet? Would you vote for her?
I don't talk about who I vote.
Right.
I don't talk about who I vote, and I've been pretty split in whom I vote over time, if you want to look at my record. Actually, right down the middle.
Okay, well, that's a red flag. For me, that's a huge red flag. So when you have somebody that's working for CNBC, especially one of their biggest, most well-known personalities in Jim Cramer, saying that, fawning over Elizabeth Warren, oh, she's so smart as a whip, and I have a soft spot for her, and, all that stuff, like, that's a red flag, man. That is not good. And I'm going to tell you guys in a second. I have one more video I'm going to play for you guys, but I'm going to tell you guys in a second why Jim Cramer, why he's a little bit of an issue, and why people obviously may not trust him. And, he has a little bit of a questionable history in what he's said, what he's done. So let's see here. So I've got one more clip for you guys. This one was much later. So like I said, the first clip was September 10th, the one I played earlier in the segment. September 10th. The second one was September 12th that I just played for you. This one was from October 1st. So just a couple of days, just a few, 4 or 5 days ago. So this one is much like, we're getting up to like the highest degree of fawning, praise. And you'll see it here. So check this out, and then we'll discuss this one as well.
Mark Zuckerberg is rallying the troops in a leaked audio of a meeting with Facebook employees obtained by The Verge. He slams Senator Elizabeth Warren's call to break up the social network.
Like Elizabeth Warren, who thinks that the right answer is to break up the companies, if she gets elected president, then I would bet that we will have a legal challenge, and I would bet that we will win the legal challenge. So does that still suck for us? Yeah. I mean, I don't have to, have a major lawsuit against our own government. I mean, that's not like the position that you want to be in when you're, it's like we care about our country and like want to work with our government to do good things. And But look, at the end of the day, if someone's going to try to threaten something that existential, you go to the mat and you fight.
It's tough to understand. The audio there, he says, we'll go to the mat. If she tries to break us up, I would bet that we will have a legal challenge, and I would bet that we will win.
Well, this is that new form of antitrust, which reminds me of the old form when Standard Oil was too powerful. This is Facebook's too powerful. Let's break it up. That's a different form of antitrust than we're used to, which was our prices going up because of monopoly.
Right. And in this case, they're not. So you
They're
still
not.
have to deal with the actual law.
Well, the law, David, the doctrine's pretty clear. You do not go after companies because they're powerful.
And
that's against the doctrine.
That is right. I think in interviews that I've done with the antitrust DOJ chief, Makin Delrahim, he's made that point.
I know.
You have to prove anti-competitive.
Right, but, Senator Warren would... it would be a different regime if Senator Warren came in. A lot of people are talking about...
It would be a very different regime in a lot of different ways, yes, we know that.
Yeah, it would be... Would she allow us to do what we do?
The three of us?
I think so.
We talk about stocks.
If she tries to stop us, we're going to the mat.
We are going to the mat,
too.
David,
Zuckerberg.
Or we only let it do bear case.
Or the mattresses.
Yes, David, ETFs are going, this, we go to the mattresses.
Yeah, I think we'll be okay.
But no, the fear of Senator Warren is getting overblown.
Bernie
it's
Sanders who raises $25 million in Q3, the most of any Democratic hopeful so far.
I can't stop getting Sanders' email. I got 5 Sanders emails yesterday. Between the first game and the second game, I got, just give me $2.83. It cost me $2.83 to read his ill-advised email. The guy does spam. He gets you no matter where you are.
Well, he's going to be around for a while with that kind of cash balance.
He's been around forever. Yeah. But I want to stop the fear of Senator Warren. I really think that that's a mistake. I think that there is such a thing called Congress, and I also don't think she's nearly as anti-business. I also think that some of these FANG stocks are so bad, I wish they'd break them up.
Ding, ding, ding. See, she's not that anti-business. I want to stop the fear of Elizabeth Warren. I think the controversy about Elizabeth Warren is being overblown. See that? So when you have somebody on a network that is they're out there to advocate for full on Wall Street should be able to do whatever they want and blah, 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 and deregulation is good. And, not to be fair, he was saying she cares about what people are going through in this country. He obviously didn't get into details, but if he knew about that, then he would get into that. And he's done interviews with Elizabeth Warren. So listen, man, this is a serious red flag when it comes to the direction that this country needs to go into when we're trying to stop any kind of future crashes. We're starting to stop any kind of further deregulation, tax cuts, all this stuff. My fear is that Elizabeth Warren is going to do what these people and their elitist buddies in Wall Street want them to. I have almost zero trust that she would actually be a true hawk on holding these big corporations accountable. Now, when it comes to somebody like Jim Cramer, now why is him embracing her and fawning over her such a big deal? Because unfortunately, Jim Cramer has a history of doing things and saying things that unfortunately it's very unfortunate and it's very not good, and it should worry a lot of people that are out there trying to obviously push for more progressive ideas. So back in 2008, in March of 2008, he got a viewer question from somebody who said, and this was on his show Mad Money. He says, the person asked them, should I be worried about Bear Stearns in terms of liquidity and get my money out of there? Cramer responded, no. Bear Stearns is not in trouble. And mind you, this is how many months? 1, 2, I would say about 6 months before the crash, the big financial crash in 2008. So, and that was I think it was around September. I think it happened September, October. I think it was September. And then, so he says, no. Bear Stearns is not in trouble. If anything, they're more likely to be taken over. Don't move your money from Bear. On March 14, 2008, Bear Stearns stock fell 92% on news of a Fed bailout and $2 a share takeover by JP Morgan. On March 17, 2008, Cramer claimed his statements were made in regards to the liquidity of Bear Stearns brokerage accounts as opposed to Bear Stearns common stock, but allaying concerns about the account holder's liquidity held in a Bear Stearns brokerage account. Cramer later wrote about the incident, "I did tell an emailer that his deposit in his account at Bear Stearns was safe, but through a clever soundbite, Jon Stewart, and subsequently Frank Rich is a writer for New York Times, and then Jon Stewart is obviously the then host of The Daily Show, neither of whom have bothered to listen to the context of the pulled quote, pass off the notion of account safety as an out-and-out buy recommendation. The absurdity astounds me. If you called Mad Money and asked me about Citigroup, I would tell you that the common stock might be worthless, but I would never tell you to pull your money out of the bank because I was worried about its solvency. Your money is safe in Citi as I said it is in Bear. As I said it was in Bear. The fact that I was right rankles me even more." So, and then they go on further, and somebody criticizes him too, and then he goes on The Daily Show and gets basically torn a new one by Jon Stewart, and obviously Jon Stewart's wonderful satirical fashion. But yeah, he has a really troubled history of going out there and advocating on behalf of these big corporations and saying what things are wonderful and they're going great. He claims he meant something else, but it's bullshit. And things as if things are going wonderfully, things are going great. But don't worry about it, guys. Everything's gonna be fine. Totally, yeah. Keep buying. Don't worry. The liquidity is not an issue. Blah blah blah. So, and then we ended up having the financial recession in 2008, late mid to late 2008, September, like I said, and that's not to say Jim Cramer is at fault for obviously the financial crash. That nobody is saying that, but I'm saying that it just kind of puts his reputation into question and makes you wonder if he's the guy that said that, and then he's now telling us how great Elizabeth Warren is, who's supposed to be like this hawk on financial hawk and calling out the banks and putting regulations on them and then holding their feet to the fire. If she's that type of person and he's embracing her, I don't know. I'm not saying he's a right winger, but he's going to support corporate Democrats. I'm sure he loved Obama. I'm sure he would love Biden. You know what I'm saying? Like the fact that he's going out and supporting this supposedly progressive politician is a big thing, man. That's something that people should definitely be worried about. And that's an endorsement, or if you want to call it an endorsement, but that's an endorsement or praising from somebody I wouldn't want to be praised by. And like I said, Elizabeth Warren has done interviews with Jim Cramer where they've talked and he's fawned over her like he did in these segments and stuff. So, I mean, and those 3 segments, each segment, one after another, each one of them got worse. The first one said, "Oh, the banks are scared of Elizabeth Warren." Second one says, "Oh, yeah, I've got a soft spot for Elizabeth Warren." And then the last one, he's just totally praising her and saying she knows everything, she's wonderful, and she's got all these great things. Like, no, she's going to be, if you go based on what Jim Cramer and CNBC is saying, and to be fair, he doesn't represent all of CNBC, what CNBC believes, but if they're acting like that towards Elizabeth Warren, that's not a confidence boosting, praise. That's something that people should definitely, keep in the back of their minds if they're actually thinking about voting for Elizabeth Warren. And while for the rest of us out there that are progressives and we're questioning Elizabeth Warren, this just confirms what we already believed. And we know that she's going to be a corporatist, and she's going to be doing the same exact thing pretty much that Obama did, and not holding the bank's feet to the fire as she pretends or kind of claims or kind of portrays herself as being. So that's a big thing that we have to worry about. And we need Bernie Sanders. And obviously you could tell there Jim Cramer is not a big fan of Bernie Sanders, and that's fine. I don't want him to be. And, Bernie Sanders is going to hold these dudes' feet to the fire. He's going to make them shake in their boots, and that's exactly what we need to happen.